the queen's pawn opening, moving the pawn in front of our queen up 2 squares. Why is this so popular, and why is this considered to be one of the best moves to start the game off in all of chess? Well, let's take a look. So we got this position here. Again, as I mentioned, right, the pawn in front of our queen up 2 squares. Why is this so popular at all levels, including, the highest levels that you see at the, the super GM level? Why is this played so often? Well, I'm gonna state a couple of reasons to start off. Okay, first off, this pawn, right, is in the very center of the board, right? We have our general center, which is this area, okay? These 16 squares, right? All of this, including this, right? This is the general center. This right here is the sweet center, okay? These 4 squares. And we are prioritizing central control, okay? Which in general, you want to control the center of the board instead of the outside of it, because centralized pieces attack more squares and they're more active, right? A great example of this is a knight. If we put a knight in the corner of the board, it's literally attacking 2 squares, okay? It's very sad. But if we bring that knight to a square like d4, notice it's attacking those squares and it is attacking 6 more. So we have a knight that's attacking 2 squares, or a knight that is attacking 4 times as many. We're going to take that central knight, right? So in this case, we have a pawn there, but we are prioritizing central control. On top of that, we are putting some pressure on the opponent's side of the board, okay? Attacking, squares like c5, e5, g5, and h6. This is actually, in terms of all 20 options that white has, this is the second best in terms of how many squares on the opponent's side of the board we're attacking after move 1. Okay, in this case, we're attacking 4. Number 1 is e4, in which case, because of our queen being so active, we are now attacking 5. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean that e4 is just hands down better than d4, right? If you ask chess players all over the place, what's better, e4 or d4, you'll get a ton of different answers. Let me know down in the comment section below which move you think is the best for white, or if you kind of just think it just depends on play style, okay? In my personal opinion, I'm not sure if either one is better, quote unquote, in and of itself, but I will say, depending on the player you are and what level you're at, one of them may, triumph over the other, okay? What does this move of d4 not do? Okay, what does this move not do? Right, well, like I said, it doesn't put as much pressure on the opponent, okay? It doesn't put as much pressure on the opponent as a move like e4 does. And at the same time, I mean, sure, the bishop and the queen can both get activated, but the chances of our queen coming to d3 or something aren't the highest, at least yet in this game. Whereas if we play the move of e4, this queen at any point can jump into the action, okay? Even though I probably don't recommend it right out the gate, unless you're trying to pull off a scholar's mate or something. One thing that this move of d4 does do is it actually prevents the move of e5 from black, and this is important, okay? e4, right? As I mentioned, this video is kind of a comparison between e4 and d4. e4, yeah, we take control of the center. We are attacking 5 squares on the opponent's side of the board, but black can kind of just do the same thing, right? And they're attacking 5 squares as well. On top of that, black can kind of play a flank pawn move and put some pressure on our center with a move like c5 with the Sicilian defense, okay? Now, if we play d4, some of you may be thinking, well, why doesn't black just kind of do the same thing on the other side of the board, right? In this case with the Dutch defense, right? Kind of a flank pawn move, putting pressure on the center. This totally works. This is a viable option, right? This is a good opening. I've made videos about it. However, this move is more weakening to the opponent than the move of c5 is with the Sicilian defense. Why is that? Because when we take control with our king pawn, we allow black to expand on the queen side if they want to, right? And this is a lot less weakening to the king than playing f5 and having to potentially deal with this, the short check diagonal, which could get black in trouble if they don't know what they're doing, right? Obviously, if black plays is fine. They're more than good. But notice here, I mean, this queen it's eyeing that square, right? If this pawn ever moves, the queen's eyeing that square. And it's not going to take too much for black to accidentally get mated here if they don't play it right. For example, let's say we play e5 with the stanchion gambit, okay? Let's say black plays g6. Is this a good move? This is not. This is not a good move in the slightest, because we're simply going to take, and if you take back, we have that short side check. We throw the queen in, that king's in trouble, right? Whereas if you expand in the center of the board and black expands on the queen side, they can play this move all they want, right? Because if we check, there's plenty of blockers to come in to help. Okay, on top of that, when we think about this move of e4, c5 is a lot less weakening to the king than f5, so that's a start. On top of that, black can expand either central pawn that they want to e5, like we mentioned, or even d5. Black can do this because the queen is defending that pawn. Whereas if we play the move of d4, black can copy us, but if they play the move of e5, well, as we all know, the king can't just fly to the middle of the board. So in that case, we can just take. Right, so in a lot of ways, I kind of consider d4 to be a preventative move, right? Like we are taking control of the center, but black has less options, all right? f5 is an option, but it is weakening to the king, and I don't really recommend the Dutch defense for beginner chess players personally. And in terms of e5, with the England gambit, people play this. People can get quick wins with this as black, but at the end of the day, it is not sound, right? If white plays this well, white is simply much better, right? And prevents black from playing that, right? And it kind of prevents black from making it a super aggressive game, super sharp game at the get-go, right? I feel weird calling this a static move, okay? And maybe that's my e4 player coming out of me. I played e4 almost my whole life, but I would call this move positional in a lot of ways, at least to start, right? There's plenty of ways that we can get crazy with this. For example, with d5, we can play e4 and we're in the Blackmore gambit. Okay, and things get crazy from here. That's just one example, but all that to say, d4, it kind of prevents black from playing a lot of different things. Okay, if we're playing as black here, again, e5, that just drops a pawn, right? d5, well, black's not attacking 5 squares on our side of the board, right? If black plays e6, they're not attacking 5 because only our bishop and our queen are active. Okay, so when we see this move of d4, it's a little bit of a halt to a lot of the different ideas that we can play. We could play c5, right, with the old Benoni defense. This is possible. This is totally viable, but in the same sense, it's just not the same as playing up against e4, right? Because here white, if they want to, they can play a move like d5, and white here has a ton of space. And yeah, I mean, at this point, we're kind of out of e4 type opening territory, all right? Whereas if we see e4, we can play e5, we can play d5, we can play c5 without, having to worry about, a pawn push taking up a ton of space. Okay. In fact, in this case, if we play c5, we kind of beat white to the punch there. So if white ever does play d4 without a pawn on c3, that is, we can take. We have the time to take because we were there first, and we actually traded off a flank pawn for a central pawn. Okay, so flipping it back to the white side of the board, d4, very strong opening, but I think in a lot of ways it's actually preventative. Okay, there is a move here that activates our pieces a little bit quicker, and that's the move e4, right? Because our queen and our bishop have so much scope, whereas with d4, their scope is a little bit more limited, at least the queen, right? That being said, this move stops a lot of the ideas that black has, including e5 to start, right? That is not an option, whereas with e4 it is. And f5 in general, black tries to make this a super sharp game, moving a flank pawn, something like that. It's just not going to have the same impact because it's on the king side of the board, and this king has to be very careful to not get mated quickly. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well as hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on anything coming your way. On top of that, I wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of October in 2023. We have some recently added benefits, and I would love for y'all to join the team. I'll see y'all in the next one.